everybody, thank you for joining me for today's yoga. We're going to be doing a gentle flow today, so there'll be no vinyasas, but we will be doing some standing poses, but the majority of the flow we're going to be doing kneeling poses and seated poses. I do have a couple of props that I'm going to use today, so I've got a block, and I'll show you where we can use it, and I've got a bolster, which we'll use a little bit later on. You don't have to have props, they can just aid you with your practice. If anyone's working with any injuries, just be mindful if something doesn't feel good in the body, just back out of it. And we're going to just start in a kneeling seated position, so sitting on our heels. If this is too uncomfortable, just use your block and just sit on it to elevate the hips so we can take the pressure out of the knees and feet. And we're just going to take a moment here, a few breaths together, just to centre ourselves and settle ourselves on the mat. So you can just rest your hands in your lap, maybe one on top of the other. You can just rest your hands on your knees. Trying to stay long in the spine, crown of the head is lifted, and our shoulders are dropped down away from the ears. And we'll take 5 rounds of breath together, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. I'm trying to match the length of our inhales and exhales. On our next inhale, we'll come into a tabletop position. So our wrists are underneath our shoulders and our knees are underneath our hips. And we'll warm up the spine with some rounds of cat-cow. So on an inhale, we'll lift the tailbone, belly drops, chest comes forward, gaze is forward. To exhale, we'll round to contract, chin comes to chest, rounding through the upper back. Inhaling, let the belly drop. Exhaling to round and contract. Inhaling to lift, chest comes forward. Exhaling to round. And final time, inhaling, belly drops. Exhaling, drawing that belly in towards the spine. And then coming into a neutral spine, we're going to bring our right foot to the back of the mat, toes are tucked, just pressing through the heel, stretching down the back of the leg into the calf. And then bringing that right knee back underneath the hip, we'll take the left leg to the back of the mat, tucking the toes, pushing through the heel. And then coming back into our tabletop pose. This time we'll walk our hands slightly in front of the shoulders. They're about shoulder width distance apart with our fingertips blade wide. Feet hip width distance apart, tucking the toes. On an exhale, we'll come into our first downward facing dog. So it's very, very early on in the practice and you're not going to be warmed up. So you want to pedal out the feet to warm up the backs of the legs. You can definitely just keep a bend in the knees here if you need to. Pressing down through those fingertips. Looking for a nice long flat back here. And then coming into some stillness with the legs, and then bending into both knees, gazing towards the top of the mat, and we'll walk our feet up towards our hands, coming into a ragdoll fold, so feet to hip width distance apart, catching a hold of opposite elbows and letting the crown of the head hang heavy, maybe swaying gently from side to side, releasing all the way down the back of the body, the hamstrings, the lower back. And then releasing our fingertips to the mat, pressing through the heels, keeping a bend in the knees. We're going to roll all the way up the spine, coming to stand. Bringing those shoulders up towards the ears and then rolling them down the back. On an inhale, we'll circle our arms up towards the ceiling, palms meet overhead, interlacing the fingers, pointing the index finger and thumb. Inhale again, lift out the waist, exhaling, taking a side bend over to the right. Trying to keep that chest open so we're not collapsing it towards the mat. Inhaling back through to centre, exhaling, taking a side bend to the left. Inhaling back through to centre, exhaling, palms in prayer possession and down through to the heart. We'll step our left foot to the back of the mat, so we're turning to the long edge of the mat. And we're going to turn our right foot so it's pointing to the top of the mat, and our back foot is parallel with the back of the mat. Both legs are straight and our arms are out of shoulder height. We're going to reach forward with our right hand. And on an exhale, taking our triangle pose. So our left hand comes up towards the ceiling as our right fingertips come down towards the mat. Option here, you can use your block. to keep that chest lifted and chest is open, left shoulder is rolling back. Or you can work the core by pressing the back of the hand just gently against that right leg. Gaze is up to the top hand if it's comfortable for your neck. And you can keep a slight micro bend in this front knee if you need to. On an inhale, we'll use our core strength to lift the chest, arms out of shoulder height. We're going to turn our right toes to point to the long edge of the mat, so they're now parallel with the top of the mat, and our left toes are going to point to the back of the mat. Coming into triangle on the left side, so reaching that left hand forward, exhaling, coming into triangle pose. Using that block if you need to. Gaze is up to that top hand if it's comfortable for you. Feeling that nice lengthening down the right side waist. On an inhale, we're using our core strength to lift the chest. We're bringing our hands onto our hips. Both toes are now pointed to the long edge of the mat. Inhale as we lift out the waist, exhale and taking a wide legged fold. Bringing our hands down onto the mat, maybe taking our hands around each foot, maybe peace fingers around the toes. Feeling that nice lengthening into the hamstrings and the release of the lower back. And then bringing our hands onto our waist, press into the feet, slight bend in the knees, inhale and lift the chest, come to stand. We're going to turn our toes out, heels in, bending into the knees, trying to bring our hips in line with the knees, coming into goddess squat. Keeping our hands onto our waist for stability, or you can cactus the arms. Feeling that opening into the chest, drawing the shoulder blades together. Try to push those thighs and knees open, glutes are engaged. If you're cactusing the arms, bring your hands back onto the waist. Inhaling, pressing into the feet, straighten the legs. We're going to turn both toes so they're pointing to the top of the mat, bringing our hands down to frame this front foot, step the right leg back, we're back in our downward facing dog. On our next exhale, lowering the knees, we're back into our tabletop pose. This time we're going to step our right foot in between the hands. So you might need to use move your right hand out of the way to get it there. We've got 15 digits in a line. You might want to scoop your back knee back. You might want to pad the back knee if you're working on a hard floor. We're placing our left hand, palm of the hands down onto the mat, taking our right hand up towards the ceiling, coming into our easy twist. Gaze is up to the top hand if it's comfortable for your neck. Option here to use a block, especially if you feel a bit tight in the upper body. Feel that nice lengthening down the left hip flexor and making sure that right knee is directly over the ankle. On our next exhale, we're going to bring this right hand down to the inside of the right leg. We're coming into our lizard pose. So option to stay here on the palms of the hands. You can use a block, resting your hands on the block and sinking those hips. If you're quite open in the hips, you can come down onto the forearms. Spine is long, reaching that crown of the head forward. Feel that nice opening into the hips. And then coming back up onto the palms of the hands. If you're on your forearms, Maybe scooting that back knee in slightly, so tucking those back toes, scooting the back knee in. We're taking the right leg back into our tabletop pose, bringing our big toes together, knees slightly apart, bringing our hips down to our heels, coming into our child's pose. Resting our forehead on the mat, arms out long in front of us, letting those hips feel heavy. And then keeping our chest low, we're going to walk our hands all the way over to the left, taking a side body stretch. You might want to put your right hand on top of the left hand to increase the stretch and the opening on the right side of the body. And then walking our hands all the way over to the right. This time maybe placing your left hand on top of the right hand, feeling that nice stretch on the left side of the body, keeping those hips on those heels. And then walking our hands back through to center, and on an inhale coming back into our tabletop pose. This time we're going to step our left foot in between the hands, 15 digits in a line, scooting that back knee back if you need to, pad it if you need to. Left knee is directly over the ankle. We'll come into our easy twist, so planting that right palm of the hand down, taking left hand up towards the ceiling. Gaze goes with it if it's comfortable for your neck, and use that block if you need to. Drawing that belly in towards the spine. On our next exhale, we'll release the left hand to the inside of the left foot, coming into our lizard pose. Option to use the block if you want to. You can stay on the palms of the hands, or you can come down onto the forearms, reaching that crown of the head forward. You might notice that one hip, maybe your hamstring, feels a little bit tighter on one side compared to the other. Sinking those hips down. And then coming back onto the palms of the hands if you're on your forearms, tucking these back toes and scooting the back knee in slightly, taking the left leg back so we're in our tabletop pose. We're going to thread the needle on an inhale, reaching our right hand up towards the ceiling, feeling that opening across the chest. Exhaling, threading the right hand behind the left wrist, coming onto the right shoulder and right ear. Maybe adding a little pressure into this left hand, making sure that your hips haven't popped off to the right. Try and keep your hips stacked directly over the knees. Option to reach this left hand forward and maybe melting that left armpit down towards the mat, or you can reach this left hand behind the lower back and holding on to the right thigh. So finding a position that feels good for you and just feeling a nice opening into the upper back and into that right shoulder blade. Hugging that belly in. And then we'll unwind from here. So bringing that left hand back underneath the left shoulder, inhaling to take that right hand up towards the ceiling, feeling that opening into the chest. Exhaling, bringing the right hand down. We'll go the opposite side. Inhaling, reaching left arm up, opening into the chest. Exhaling, thread the needle, coming down onto our left shoulder and left ear. Taking any position that feels good for you here. So you can wrap your hand around the lower back, you can reach this right arm forward, melting that right armpit down towards the mat. right hand back underneath the right shoulder, and on an inhale, taking that left hand up towards the ceiling. Exhaling to lower the left hand down. We're going to come to sit in on our heels and then come in to sit to the long edge of the mat and bringing our legs out wide. Preparing ourselves for a wide-legged fold. So you can bring a block just behind you underneath the sitting bones. If you feel like you're rounding backwards and slouching, you want to feel like you're lifting up out of the waist, maybe even tilting a little bit forward. We want to make sure our knees and toes are both pointing up towards the ceiling, pushing through the heels so the legs are engaged. This might be enough for you. You might feel a nice stretch into the inner thighs. If you want to go a little bit deeper, you can start to walk your fingertips forward, maybe coming down onto the elbows and forearms. Try and find length in the spine here. Try not to round through the upper back too much. You might notice after a few breaths you might be able to creep your fingertips a little bit further forward and deepen the stretch. And then on our next inhale, starting to walk our fingertips back in towards us as we lift the chest. We'll bring our hands to the outside of the thighs and gently bringing our legs back in towards each other. And we'll come so that we're on the long edge of the mat. And our legs out long. Pushing into the heels, drawing the toes back towards you, lifting up out of the waist and feeling even in the sitting bones, reaching those arms up overhead. We're going to take a seated fold. So inhaling as we lift, exhaling, hinge from the hips, taking our fold. So bringing our hands wherever is comfortable. Reaching that crown of the head forward towards the toes. It doesn't matter how low you fold. Option here, you could use like a bolster under your legs if your hamstrings are feeling tight. And just connecting your chest with the thighs. You could even use a block. Just enjoying that nice release all the way down the back of the body. And then releasing from here on an inhale. Starting to lift the chest. We're going to cross at the ankles and come to sitting on our heels. Bring our fingertips just behind us. On an inhale, we're going to draw our shoulder blades together and just lift in the chest. So coming into a variation of camel, so like a baby camel. You might be able to lift your hips a little bit, noticing how this feels in the back. Just enjoying that nice opening into the chest. Exhaling to lower the hips. And reaching the chest forward, just resting our hands on our knees. And we'll try baby camel again. So we'll bring our fingertips just behind us, drawing our shoulder blades together. Feel that nice opening into the chest. You might be able to lift the hips. And exhaling to lower. And then bringing our left hand onto our right knee, right fingertips behind us, just taking a twist. Taking our gaze over this right shoulder if it feels okay for you. And then coming back through to centre and bringing our right hand onto our left knee, left fingertips behind us. And then coming back through to centre, bringing our heels off to one side. And then bringing our legs out long, bending into the knees, soles of the feet on the mat, reaching the arms out forward in front of you at shoulder height. And on an exhale with control, we're going to slowly roll all the way down the spine. Core is engaged. And then bringing our shoulders and back of the head onto the mat. Keeping a bend into the knees, we're going to bring our right ankle on top of the left knee. We're going to come to recline pigeon, or recline thread the needle, some people call it, and we're going to bring our right hand in between the gap between the legs, our left hand to the outside of the left leg, and holding on to the back of the thigh. Feeling that nice stretch into the right hip and into the glutes. If you want to go a little bit deeper, you can always hold on to the shin, interlacing your fingers around the shin, and just drawing that left knee a little bit closer in towards the chest. And releasing the hands and releasing our left sole of the foot back down onto the mat. We'll bring our arms out shoulder height. We're going to drop our right sole of the foot all the way over to the left, with our right knee pointing up towards the ceiling. You can take your gaze over to the right if it feels comfortable for you, or you can keep your gaze up towards the ceiling. Release from here, coming back through to centre, and we'll release the right leg down, keeping a bend in the knee sole of the foot on the mat. We'll bring our left ankle on top of the right knee. We're going to draw our right knee in towards the chest, and maybe holding, interlacing the fingers around the back of the thigh, or if you want to go deeper, around the shin. Feeling that nice opening into the left hip this time, and left glutes. Releasing the hands, we're bringing our right foot back down onto the mat. Our arms come out shoulder height. We're going to take our left sole of the foot all the way down over to the right, with our left knee pointing up towards the ceiling. Maybe gazing over the left shoulder, or keeping your gaze facing up, whatever feels better for your neck. Releasing from here, so bringing our right knee back up so it's facing towards the ceiling, releasing the left leg, bringing the knees in towards the chest, wrapping our arms around our shins, maybe rocking gently from side to side, massaging the lower back. And we'll make our way into Shavasana. So we'll bring our legs out long, and maybe taking our heels to the corners of the mat with our toes rolling out wide. Option here, you can use a bolster underneath your knees, just to help make the pose feel a little bit more comfortable. We'll bring our arms down long, palms facing up towards the ceiling. Relaxing the back of the head, closing the eyes, letting those shoulders drop down away from the ears. Taking those slow, steady breaths we took to centre ourselves at the start of practice. So we'll take 5 rounds of breath together here. Arms back to your body, lying on the mat. Take a little movement, so wiggling the fingers, wiggling the toes. You might want to take a full body stretch here, so reaching your arms up overhead. And then bringing one knee in towards the chest and then the other. An option here to roll to one side and push yourself up to seated, or you can hold onto the back of the thighs and rock yourself up to seated. Keeping the eyes closed and come into cross-legged. And just taking a moment here to scan through the body, checking how it's feeling. Do you feel any different to how you felt when you first got on the mat? Noticing if you've released any areas of tension. Noticing if you've helped quiet the mind. And just let go of any unnecessary thoughts that you didn't need. And we'll close off our practice, so bringing our palms together at heart centre, and bowing our forehead to our fingertips. Thanks for joining me. Give yourself a thank you for taking time to get on the mat today. Let me know if you've got any feedback, and I will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed that gentle flow. Goodbye.